Hello and welcome to a brand new film review by the Nerdpocalypse. I'm your host Jay. I'm here with my co-host Micah.
Hey.
All right, guys, we're back to talk about King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. This is a new Guy Ritchie fantasy film starring Charlie Hunnam and Jude Law.
You're born king. You wanted a prophecy. This is your prophecy. The man who pulled sword from stone. Raise that sword. Show the power of Excalibur.
Okay, so I saw this movie. This is already being referred to as possibly the biggest flop of 2017.
Wow.
I think that's about right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. So the more I think about it after seeing it, when I first came out of it, I was kind of like, this movie's fine. And then it has slowly deteriorated, not into bad, but into just incredibly mediocre. I would give this movie a score of a 2 out of 5. That has gone down over the last couple of days, and I haven't read anybody's reviews or anything, but that's gone down from a 3 to a 2 over the last couple of days after thinking about it.
So what's the movie about?
So the general premise is the King Arthur story, right? Where Charlie Hunnam is the son of, I forget the character's name. His dad.
It really made an impact.
Yeah, right, exactly. So they're trying to tell like a slightly different version of that story, right? Which is Charlie Hunnam as a kid, his dad has Excalibur and like is like the great king that everyone respects. The kingdom gets attacked by this mage, and he fights off the mage or what have you, but there's sort of like a coup that happens from his uncle. This is not really a spoiler. This is all kind of in the trailer. Yeah. A coup that happens, and his parents are killed, and Charlie Hunnam as a kid is like sent off, Jesus style, like, down the river or what have you. And then he grows up. Working in this brothel, just like, protecting the prostitutes of this brothel, and he's like this good guy or whatever. And then like eventually it's like, oh, his lineage and trying to get Excalibur and realizing who he is, and his uncle trying to get him and stop him and take over the kingdom and all this other stuff, right? It's pretty straightforward.
Straightforward, no surprises or anything like that. Nothing like I would I'm not a huge King Arthur, Knights of the Round person, but I do know the basics of the story, and I have seen Excalibur. Like, how would you compare it to Excalibur?
Excalibur is the seminal King Arthur story, right? It is the weird, twisted 80s, like creepy in a lot of ways, but like really good high fantasy that was in the 80s. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, actually. It couldn't hold Excalibur's jockstrap. Like it really can. And part of it is the storytelling. The storytelling is fine for a Guy Ritchie movie. It is
used to like Guy Ritchie, like we're Guy Ritchie fans. We're old Guy Ritchie fans. And
yeah, like I like, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch and all that. If
someone asks me what's your favorite movie, I always say Snatch, because that's the one that immediately comes.
Yeah, it's a great film.
It's a great film, but over the last couple of years, Guy Ritchie has kind of fallen for me a bit.
Yeah, because Guy Ritchie did those new Sherlock Holmes movies, which are okay.
They're fine. They're okay.
Right. And I think that's why they had him direct this. And they were like, hey, you sort of reinvented this English, like classic story with like, gave it a little bit of new flair, and it worked. So they were like, yeah, why don't you try this? Here's the thing, like that style of talking and that style of like, that quick, like, and then this happened. That he does, like the speed up, like storytelling, which is so signature Guy Ritchie. It's really weird here, and it doesn't really fit at all.
Yeah, I can't imagine watching that type of movie in this type of genre.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it
barely worked in Sherlock Holmes.
Right, exactly, because it's it's a new style English way of talking that they're trying to cram into old style English ways of talking, which is weird. And like that part is strange. And the movie is kind of like if Turkish got Excalibur. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of the same beats of like classic Guy Ritchie movies. Like, instead of the Knights of the Round Table, like Galahad and like Lancelot and all that other stuff that you would come to know from the general lore, it's his crew, right? Like, it's like the crew that he grew up with, like the shitty dudes like that he rolled with that are like good guys, but like, you know, they're the poor shitty guys in town.
Like a bunch of English thugs playing King Arthur.
Yeah, like it kind of is, right? Like, so that's a big part of it. Things that really bothered me, and I never thought I would say this, but the more I've gotten into reviewing movies, the more I notice things just because you have to, like, so you can talk about it. The costuming in this movie is really weird, and it doesn't make any sense. I said that when the first trailer came out. I was like, why is he wearing like that jacket that like dudes wear now? Like it just seemed odd, right?
Yeah, isn't Charlie Hunnam wearing like a pleather jacket with fur around the collar? Like,
yeah, it's
like
he wore
some sort of New York drug dealer,
right? It's like the same coat Vin Diesel wore in the first Triple X movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's very similar, right? So, like, that's kind of funny. Like, he wears that, and that's just kind of strange. But there's this whole, like, they try to mix, like, let's give, like, new armor and stuff like that that'll be interesting, visually interesting, but it doesn't make sense in the lore of, like, it's King Arthur times. Also, I'm not sure that this really happens in the same sort of timeline. Like, if you look at Excalibur, it's really like knights and fantasy and like, you know, obviously that's steeped in some level of timing in, you know, human history. This one is like, how old, like, what time is this? Like, is this supposed to be like normal, like Knights of the Round type age, or like 100 years more modern? Like, it's kind of weird. You don't really know.
Does it feel like Game of Thrones? Like, is it trying to ape the style of Game of Thrones? Like, when I watch Game of Thrones, I see modern high fantasy. I don't see those dudes walking around.
No, Game of Thrones is way more consistent in its styling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like based on sort of that old English, old European era, but like it's consistent. Where this one is like, oh, okay, they're knights, you know, dressed in these things that you would think they were, and then the next thing you're like, did they get that at Hot Topic? Like, it's just kind of strange. Like, the costuming is weird. Like, it really is strange. What actually would have been kind of cool, honestly, and would have probably worked with Guy Ritchie's style and everything, is a modern telling of this. Not a hey, we're trying to do the old school style King Arthur movie, but like, we're doing King Arthur now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could do it. You'd have to be creative. Look, you could just make them gangsters, but like they're really good gangsters or whatever. That would have made more sense to Guy Ritchie's style than this movie. It really doesn't make any sense at all. One of the other things, like Jude Law is good in it because Jude Law is great. Right. Like, I've never seen a movie where I'm like, man, Jude Law really phoned this in. Like, never. Like, he is going the limit. Right. So he's really good. Charlie Hunnam is fine. Charlie Hunnam, much like the score of this movie, is a 2 out of 5. Like, that's all he's doing in this movie.
I've never thought of Charlie Hunnam as a decent actor. Now, I've never seen Sons of Anarchy.
I've only seen a couple episodes of it. He was, again, fine.
I've seen him in enough movies where he's like Sam Worthington and Jai Courtney to me. Like,
he's in that world. No, he's definitely in that world. The other thing that is particularly interesting, and it's probably the thing that most people will talk about in their reviews, is the CGI in places is really, really not good. Like, it's really not good. Like, the final fight between Arthur and Jude Law's character is really CGI heavy. But in a way, it looks like very video game-ish, you know? Because like the budget isn't quite there, so they're moving really fast. So it's got that like timey-wimey sort of like their bodies are moving. You know, it's like, okay, the best example I can give is You remember how shitty the CGI looked in The Matrix 2 when he's fighting all the Smith agents?
Yeah, everybody looks kind of rubbery.
Yeah, there are parts that look like that, and I'm like, there's no excuse for that in 2017. Like there really isn't, unless your budget is incredibly low. And I don't remember what the budget is for this, but it clearly wasn't enough.
Right.
Now things I liked about it. The idea that like when he picks up Excalibur with one hand, at least in the beginning, or the vast majority of the movie, when he picks up with one hand, it's just like a regular sword. But when he grabs it with both hands, it basically gets this like smoke fire effect, and it like lights up, and you're like, oh shit, son, it's on. And like his eyes turn blue. Like that was kind of cool. You were like, because his father in the movie is played by Eric Bana, right? So he's the first person you see wield Excalibur, and like he knows how to wield it. So, there's like this big giant elephant and like these troops and all this shit's coming, and he's just like, step aside, I got this. And he just fucking pulls the sword out and like, holds it with both hands and just like goes to work on these guys. And it's a cool effect, right? It's basically bullet time. That's what from the Max Payne games, right? So when he activates Excalibur, basically everything slows down, and so he moves at like, I guess a normal pace or a faster pace. I guess he's moved from our perspective.
From his perspective, he's moving. Everything else is moving slower.
Right, but in reality, he's moving super fast. Right. And that was kind of a cool effect. And it looked good when it looked good, and it looked really bad when it didn't, right? You know what I mean? But there were a couple of moments where I was like, damn, all right, that was kind of cool. Like, the funny thing is, even though I'm giving this a 2 out of 5, I think that if given the right work on it, I don't know that Guy Ritchie may be the right director to carry it forward. It's not a bad universe. Like they've established some pretty cool things. I wouldn't mind going back to that universe. They just need to like stop trying to make it into a modern gangster British film and just make the movie. Like I don't even think Guy Ritchie would have necessarily made a bad movie had he just walked away from that crutch of a style that he has, right? But like the Lady of the Lake was kind of cool. Like there was some good concept shit. Like the mages were really neat. We're not going to talk spoilers, but it's actually in the trailer. Like Jude Law's character is a mage, right? And the shit that he does in the movie, I won't spoil that part. The stuff that he does is pretty cool. Like that stuff looks kind of neat. But other than that, the movie, I was cautiously optimistic about it from the first trailer. If you listen to our podcast, the Nerdpocalypse, you'll know that. I was very cautiously optimistic about it throughout. The last trailer they did, the last full trailer, I was like, okay, this looks coherent. Like I'm like mildly pretty excited about this. And then no.
So I read that originally Guy Ritchie and his crew pitched this as a Lord of the Rings style trilogy.
I heard originally that they were going to do 7 movies.
7. Wow.
They're not going to get two. They're not going to get a second one. They're not. And that's a shame because the King Arthur lore is pretty cool, but we never get multiple movies. Like Excalibur, had they done it, like that movie one is super long. I think it's like 3 hours because they went through so much of that story. Like there's so much King Arthur lore, and they were like, we're getting everything in, like Arthur's son, Merlin. Like they did all that. Like Merlin's not even in this. There are mages and Merlin is mentioned, but Merlin's not even in this, which leads me to believe that they were just like, okay, well, Merlin's going to be in the second one. No, he's not. No, he's not. So there won't be a second one. But all in all, it's a 2 out of 5. It's a Netflix. It's a rental, maybe. Don't rush out and see it. I really wouldn't. I don't think it's worth it. And it very well might be the biggest flop of 2017.
Wow.
So that's it for our review, and we will see you guys next time.
See you.
Bye.
That was awesome.